Today's video, we're going to talk about PMax exclusions and why these are basically a pathetic waste of time. Time you could spend on something else that's going to make you a lot more actual money for your business than trying to play this game of whack-a-mole of excluding placements on your PMax campaign so that you don't show up in places you don't want to show up anymore, which I can't blame anybody for wanting that. It's just the reality is, it is literally that, a game of whack-a-mole. You knock down one bad placement, up comes another shitty placement. Knock that one down, another one springs up. Good old game of whack-a-mole. And now if you like playing games, that's on you, go ahead and do it. But you're going to end up wasting so much time doing this for almost no benefit. And I can give you 100 other things on this channel that I've already talked about that will be more productive with your time than doing specifically that. Okay, and I'm going to explain why that is a bit more into detail. And ultimately, if you do want to reduce your amount of wrong placements that you're getting through your PMax campaign, ultimately running ads outside of Google, outside of Gmail / Google properties, which when you look at the placements menu or placements report on your PMax campaign, all the other placements besides Google properties, if you want to cut that down to almost nothing, there's a quick, easy way to do it. / at least cut it down to the places that will convert. Okay, I'm going to talk about that in today's video, so you have everything you need to walk away from this video to do exactly that. If you do not know who I am though yet, I am Corey Zyman, owner of Guaranteed PPC, an online advertising agency that specializes in guaranteeing results for their clients. That is, we do not charge our clients management fees until we can get them a certain minimum lift in their profitability, basically in excess of any management fee that we charge. We are the only agency out there who offers any kind of similar guarantee, which should tell you something about the quality of the information that I'm sharing with you in today's video. So with that said, you can exclude placements in your PMax campaign, certain websites, certain apps where you don't want your ads to run, which if you don't already know and you just stumbled across this video, if you go under the reporting in your PMax campaign, you can literally see exactly what websites your ad showed up on. And, I'm not going to spend too much time explaining that. Just all you got to do is Google how to placements report PMax. Where is it? And then they'll give you the instructions and you can click through and you can see exactly where your money is going. For that matter, the more that shows up under Google properties as it shows up under that placements report, the more money you're going to be making as a general rule of thumb. But there are times if you have a really good offer that's unique, running the placements outside of the Google properties will also be profitable. It's just not as common. And by default, for most of you guys, you should be trying to get as much of it into the Google properties as you can. And I'm going to talk about how you do this. So for that matter, if you're trying to use the placements report in and itself to block the placements that are not on Google properties or itself, Google properties meaning Google, YouTube, the Discovery app, then it's gonna be a pointless exercise because of like what I said earlier. You can eliminate a placement, but there's millions upon millions upon millions of websites for your ads to actually show up on. Okay, so and for that matter, there's a bunch of websites that are basically just bots that are clicking through the ads. I saw a study on this where they were saying about 20%, this was a click fraud company that has click fraud software. They ran some sort of study and they found out about 20% of the websites out there are what they called or is known as made for AdSense websites, where the entire website's purpose is to simply get people that go there, instead of clicking back on their browser, click on an ad to get out of there. The real business model is that's what they're claiming they're doing. The reality is much more nefarious. They're clicking their own damn ads. Okay, so there's millions of websites that you could show up on where they're going to click their own ads to make money. Google could clean this up a lot more than they are, but they don't. They try somewhat. If they really wanted to clean it up, they could, because they could just get websites that don't convert and they could say, sorry, your websites don't convert. We're not going to let you run our ads on your website anymore, which I know that would be a bit of a logistical challenge because given a lot of websites don't track properly. But if they made a real initiative to get websites to have tracking, Google offered premium support to their advertisers to get the tracking set up on their website. And they did this on 100,000 websites. And then they studied which websites converted and got rid of the ones that didn't. They could fix this. They're benefiting from these scam websites, which is exactly what it is. It's a scam website stealing advertising funds from people. And Google, some of it's going in their pocket, so they don't ultimately care. So with that said, You could block a website, another one will get the click. If you are not having your PMax campaign set up the right way, you can block that one, another one will come up. If you block that one, another one will come up. This is not a long-term solution to showing up on these placements that are not profitable, okay? And for that matter, by the way, Google's came out with PMax to sell more of this junk traffic. So they're not just complicit in letting this happen, by the way, like what I just described. They're actually double downing on it because PMax has display traffic mixed in. And ultimately, they don't hide the fact that your ads are running on Display Network when you run a PMax campaign, but the average advertiser doesn't know Display Network is full of fraud clicks. So they ultimately just have their reps to recommend PMax, getting actually paid a commission if they get you to do it. And then once you're doing that, you're now paying for a bunch of display traffic, which you don't know you're getting because you actually have to run an advanced report to even know what websites your ads are showing up on. And also given they don't help people with their tracking, 70% of people roughly that I audit their accounts don't even have tracking, and they end up buying a bunch of fraud clicks and they're unaware of it. So Google, them needing their revenue to go up every quarter, realized instead of just having search campaigns display, they actually combined them all and then said, hey, you want to get on Google search? Run a PMax. But you also get the display traffic, and they got to where they sold these placements that nobody wanted more than they were able to before. The revenue goes up, Google wins, the advertiser loses. And for that matter, Google has gotten really cocky because for the most part, they're the only game in town. And even if they piss off somebody and they quit, there's somebody else to show up, frankly speaking. And for that matter, in any given market where there's money to be made, there's always going to be some people there willing to advertise. That's the reality at the end of the day. If you want to actually fix this, the feed-only setup, as per what it's called in our PPC space, which is not a term I coined, is the right way to block off non-Google placements or non-Google property placements. So what you do with the feed-only setup, if you're not aware of this, is you go into the asset group, and you go into the asset group and you delete the headlines and descriptions and logo and videos from that asset group itself so that Google can't run your ad on search. It cannot run it on the display network. It can't run it basically anywhere. Now, that is partially incorrect. For the most part, and that is if you're actually running PMax to run shopping placements, the picture ads on Google with the price underneath it, you upload a product feed to your PMax campaign, only giving it that product feed, not having the headlines, descriptions, all the other stuff. Google will only have one choice, which is to run the ads on shopping. But it can also still run your ads on the display network if they have a dynamic remarketing ad show up, which is a side thing. But for the most part, they're not going to run outside the shopping placements on Google, those are normally profitable placements, so it's okay. And you've basically artificially created a situation where Google's objective, which is to run your ads outside of Google search, where they have trouble selling ad placements, and you cut them out of that game, okay? Now, that said, that's not the only advice I would give you here, because a lot of you guys have PMax campaigns going on right now. You decided to open this video up because you wanted to get rid of bad placements. You're already in a situation where you don't have a feed-only setup, and you rely maybe on the results that PMax campaign already brings in. You're already making 10, 20 grand a month or whatever from it, and you can't simply go without that. And that's relevant because if you delete the headlines, descriptions, logos, all of it on that PMax campaign randomly, your campaign results is going to go from, cruising along to and it's going to stay there for 30, 60, 90 days before it fully comes back. And if you can't take a 50, 70% cut on your profitability of that PMax campaign for at least 30 days, you don't do it. The long-term best solution still is just have a feed-only setup. If you actually are running a PMax campaign for an e-commerce business and you agree with me that just running the shopping placements is the right thing to do, which, by the way, it is the right thing to do because with lead generation campaigns, you're better off running those through standalone search, shopping, or search display network, demand gen, YouTube separately, because you have more control over those placements with standalone campaigns. And then you run your shopping placements through the PMax campaign because the PMax campaign has more machine learning built into it versus the standard shopping, and it'll make more money from shopping placements running it through the PMax campaign. So of that, the only reason why you would run PMax at the end of the day, knowing what I know, having set up thousands of campaigns before, is that you run PMax for shopping placements because they run better shopping placements. Everything else to the standalone campaigns that you want to do, which display network still works, but you have to put tight reins around it in order to get it to work. But if you are running the PMax to run shopping placements and you have the headlines there and all that, and you can't take the results hit, Well, then you have to go into plan B. Plan B being what ramps up non-profitable placements the most is the following. You have to avoid these three things here, basically, in other words, which for that matter, I've talked about these things in detail in other videos, which is you have to know if you're going to make millions of dollars a year on Google Ads, you have to know these gotchas because it may not be relevant to you today, but there's going to be a day if you make your ads work and you scale up your ads and you end up making, eventually a few $1 million a year from your ads, you're going to have all this overhead that you have to pay for that is reliant on the ad account working to pay for the overhead. And Google ultimately is going to make changes. And if you're to make your campaigns buy traffic that you don't want to buy anymore, therefore make the campaign unprofitable, then you got all this overhead you have to pay for it. Now you're out of business and you built it up for nothing. The only way you avoid this is you stay abreast of the changes. You can either hire a firm like us to help you stay abreast of the changes automatically, or you have to subscribe to this channel because I go over what these changes are, of what Google tries to sneak in there on an ongoing basis to get you to spend more money on stuff they want you to buy. So if you haven't subscribed already, you should, because literally, as far as I know, I'm the only channel on YouTube that spends 40 hours a week doing ad strategy at our firm to know what works and then spend another 30 hours a week just talking about it on this YouTube channel. Usually either people have a day job doing PPC and no channel, or they have a channel and they don't manage any ads. So therefore, they don't know what to tell you. Furthermore, though, you should check out my blog on my site. I have a fantastic blog at guaranteedppc.com/blog where I go through the strategies we're using to actually guarantee results for our clients and what to avoid similarly to that, with screenshots, with everything you need to know about it. And if you like the channel, you should check that out as well. If you have more money than time, then the only reasonable thing, and not just, this isn't a sales pitch, the only reasonable thing to do is hire myself at Guaranteed PPC, because I manage 50 different accounts at any given time, and I know the stuff that works and what doesn't work before I even touch your campaign. So I'm not guessing anymore, and you shouldn't want to have to guess, maybe this will work, maybe this won't, once you get to a certain level. And that level, by the way, is usually right around 500 grand a year in revenue. Once you've gotten past that point, if you're going to get to 5 million, you need somebody who actually specializes in just this in order to compete with the big boys that are making all that money, because that's what they're doing. But here's the things that you don't want to do so that you show up to where you can have 50+% of your traffic on non-Google properties if you do these things. One of which is broken tracking. PMax thrives and runs, it's using their machine learning algorithms. Google even says this. Well, it uses the conversion data to know what placements that are profitable, which are not. If you change your tracking, the tracking breaks, Google, the algorithm's going to say, oh, I don't know what I knew anymore. I'm going to send the campaign back into learning mode. The campaign goes back into learning mode, and it's going to ratchet up the traffic that doesn't work again, because it doesn't realize the only traffic that worked was the Google placements. Well, which I don't know what dumbass at Google decided to program the system this way, but that's what they do it. In fact, I don't think this is a coincidence. I think they do this. They're looking for opportunities to sneak in the crappy traffic so they can sell it any chance they can. And when they have an opportunity where the tracking breaks, that's just what the system does. Well, anyway, regardless of why it happens, you got a week, 2 weeks where you're going to be loaded up to the gills, baby, with display network traffic on these made-for-sense ad websites that don't work, that are fraud websites, though also on legitimate websites where even big websites, by the way, like Forbes.com, they still click their own freaking ads. And I know that seems absurd. But a lot of these media organizations are losing money. They're on life support. It's certainly not past them to click their own damn ads to try to not go bankrupt. You would if it were you. I mean, come on, let's just be honest here. Either click your ads or go bankrupt. You know what you're going to do. Or, at least for a lot of you guys, we'll just say. So anyway, with that said, if your tracking breaks and your profitability of your campaign goes in the shitter, and you're talking about PMax specifically, a big chunk of that is because the mix or percentage of Google properties to non-Google properties gets thrown, it's off. You'll get, instead of 90% Google properties, it'll be, 50% Google properties, 50% not. The Google property clicks you get, by the way, if you're going to go back into learning mode because the tracking broke, it's not the same as before as well, which drives your profitability down even more. So that's one way, though, that you get a lot of non-Google property placements. The other is when you break GA4. This is a brand new thing that we found out as an agency, which is, by the way, why you hire an agency, because you don't want to make every single last mistake for yourself. You're going to drive yourself crazy doing this. So we found out if you link your Google Analytics account to your Google Ads account, which you absolutely should because it's going to help your PMax campaigns, then if something happens to GA4, the data doesn't flow in the way that it was before because the tag broke, the GA4 tag broke on your site, the conversion tracking broke, on and through GA4, even if those conversion goals aren't used at all for the PMax campaign bidding, that PMax campaign will be loaded up to the gills, baby, with this other non-Google property traffic. And way worse than even if just your conversion tracking broke, that the PMax campaign does use directly, which is crazy, I know. But it tells me when Google says that they use machine learning to run PMax, what they're really saying is they're using their own Google Analytics data more so than the conversion data that you set up through your Google Ads account, which, it does make sense at the end of the day why they're doing that, because GA4 has so much more data to rely on. They can look at bounce rates and dwell time and scroll rates and all this other stuff that a simple conversion won't tell you in and itself, in terms of having an algorithm that can digest a whole shitload of data and make decisions thereof, and very accurately, because they're working with way more data than the little bit of conversion data you give it. That's the other way that you get a ton of junk placements. The other final way is you have a large ROAS or CPA change without a market to back it up, that is. So if you go more than 15% in terms of the adjustment to your target CPA or target ROAS, okay, you will a lot of times see the junk placements ramp up. And I mentioned, in parentheses here, if there's no market. So if you're going into the busy season, let's say you build decks, custom decks, that type of market, the demand will go way up in the springtime because people want to do home renovation in the spring. If you go ahead and you set the target ROAS higher than you normally have it, but you're going right into the busy season, even if you do a 40% adjustment to your target CPA, lower the CPA by 40% versus that 15% I told you about before, chances are Google will just, keep the same ratio of Google properties to non-Google property placements the way that it was, versus suddenly send a bunch of your traffic to non-Google property placements. And that is because the demand and the market is there and it knows how to handle what you want it to do. The reason why a 15% change is all you want to do is because the algorithm can't react very well very quickly. What the algorithm does is it looks at a bunch of data and then it makes decisions. Well, when you say I want to double my profit overnight, Google's algorithm doesn't know how to do that. It doesn't have that information to go on. It may know a little bit more about how to get more sales if you said you wanted a tiny bit more that it's holding back on, because ultimately your campaign's only set up to spend so much, and it's also trying to be conservative to lock in the cost per conversion that you want, but it certainly doesn't know how to double it overnight. And so the greater your change on the target ROAS or CPA, the more likely the campaign goes back into learning mode, and if the learning mode comes up, the ratio of the traffic Google property to non-Google property will likely change. Not always, but often. But I want to specify that the only thing that will almost for sure make sure a ton of their traffic goes from Google properties to non-Google properties in the placements menu is when the GA4 tracking breaks or changes in some way. If you have broken primary conversion tracking, or you made too large of a change for the algorithm to change in the target CPA or target ROAS, depending if you're using or maximize conversion value bidding strategy, then you may see a shift in your target, your placements report. You may not. Okay. Percentage wise, there might be a 30% chance of it happening with the two that I just mentioned. Whereas if GA4 messes up, it's like 100% chance, practically speaking, for what we've seen at our agency. So that gives you some perspective. With that said, also, if you just want to cut out all the BS all this work that it's going to take for you to figure out how to make millions of dollars a year running ads for your business, you should just reach out to us and see if we've already worked in your space before, because we can sell you the winning ads, landing pages, campaign templates, all of it that works for your niche market, and you just copy paste those suckers in your ad account and get the same results we're getting in a different city, state, or country that you're in. And it's all fair game because you're not competing with our client that we have, and why not use it? We can tell you the results you're going to get with it up front, and can save you a lot of time and money and hassle doing that. Also though, if you don't like necessarily working with an agency like ours, you should still consider just reaching out to me if you're stuck with where you're at and you can't figure out the way to get to the next level with your business. Ask me about your ads, why they're not scaling or why they're not working, and I can go through everything you got, not just your ads themselves, which many people are only trained to do, but look at your sales process, your closing rates, your packaging of your products, your website design, and see where the bottleneck actually is. I've been doing this for people about a year now that have been reaching out from the channel, and everybody who gets a call wants another call because they find out the information's extremely valuable that you get in that 30-minute coaching call on what they specifically need to do. So if you're interested in that, you can also reach out to me at my firm. But with that said, that pretty much goes over PMax exclusions and why it's pointless to try to exclude certain ones. If you like to sit there and exclude certain ones. Be my guest. It's just the effectiveness of it is not going to be much at all. And you can spend, when you're trying to make money with PPC, you're always trying to find the lowest hanging fruit, and you knock those things out, and then you find the next lowest hanging fruit. And this is not low hanging fruit at the end of the day. There's lots of things you can do to make more money. This is way low on the total pole. Should be of your interest and your time, because it really doesn't do anything for you at the end of the day. It's easy, just doesn't really move the needle much. With that said, I'll wrap it up with that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
Remember when I said PMax campaign was important during this video? Well, this video here tells you how to do it.